This is episode number 142 of the Guns Magazine podcast. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. First, before we get started though, let's have a quick chat about our sponsor, 1791 Gun Leather. Centuries ago, the original patriots of this country fought and died for promises they protected in the Constitution. Chief among those promises was the right to bear arms. Now, generations later, 1791 protects that right and our firearms. Makers of the 2020 Holster of the Year, the end results of every 1791 holster is a mastery of craft and function, customizable to any firearm you require. 1791 Gun Leather provides in the way only an American company can. For more information, visit 1791gunleather.com. Today's guaranteed to be a lively discussion as I talk to Tyson Warmoth, a current police officer and former guest here on the podcast. In this episode, we talk about society's seeming drive to undermine and weaken police officers and what effect that might be having on the state of crime in America. This discussion comes on the heels of the Uvalde, Texas school shooting, but it applies to cops all over the country. Now here's Tyson Warmoth as we discuss the idea, are we making our cops into cowards? Well, good morning, Tyson.
Good morning, Brent.
Well, I appreciate you. You're in your car talking to me, which is kind of weird since we only live about, 10 minutes apart. But unfortunately, you're just getting over that little virus that's been going around and suddenly making a resurgence.
Well, when you specify virus, let's be specific. Let's say COVID.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There was nothing else involved. Let's just say COVID, Omicron to be exact.
There you go.
Yes, I'm on the mend, feeling 100% actually. But I know you're advanced in age, so you don't want to come near me. I get that.
Wow. Well, my doctor told me recently there's a thing going around, and I tested positive for it. It's 3 letters. It's called AGE. So, no, when we scheduled this, I wasn't sure what your status was going to be. So I appreciate you talking to us on the phone. But soon we will go out to dinner and be face to face and live large and speak of days of glory. But anyway, moving forward on today's topic, which is, are we making the cops into cowards? And that's a somewhat provocative title, but I will say the coward word is being used quite a bit lately, especially in regards to the incident at Uvalde. And, as a retired cop, it doesn't set well with me because there was, I believe, approximately 325 police officers at Uvalde. I find it hard to believe that every single one of them was a chicken shit. And I think it's a symptom of a deeper problem, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. You speak eloquently. You've been involved in several police shootings. You're a veteran officer with, I couldn't tell you how many years you've got on now, but we did do
32 and a half.
We did a couple of podcasts about 2 months ago that I'm actually myself very proud of. We talked about your 2 shootings, including one of them that you shot somebody that killed one of your coworkers. It's not very happy, uplifting kind of podcast, but I think everybody ought to go back and listen to them. It really, you put a voice to what it's like to be on the police side of things. So let's just start with Uvalde. How did you feel when you realized they stood around for a long, long time and didn't go after this clown that was shooting the kids?
Okay. First, let me preface my comments by saying, I am speaking as an individual United States citizen. I do not represent my department in any way. My wife cautioned me, said, honey, you have a tendency to be too outspoken sometimes, and you're so close to retirement. Do you really want to do this podcast? And I said, well, are we making cops into cowards? I said, if I refuse to speak, I said, aren't I just being a bit of a coward myself, afraid to say what I feel is the truth? And I said, no, I can't do that. But I am speaking as a United States citizen who has his First Amendment rights. not as a member of my department. I do not represent my department in any manner, shape, or form in this conversation. How do you like that legalese there?
That was really good. And I'm sitting there when you were talking about that, the word irony, played into it completely. So, no, I appreciate it. And to underscore what you just said, yes, you're speaking as a citizen that still has First Amendment rights, but does have experience as a law enforcement officer. So we're going to talk about this thing. So back to the question. How did you feel when you saw that?
Disgusted, sad. The one thing that I've developed in my old age is empathy, and watching the timeline, and then unfortunately, watching news broadcasts of the family and the grieving, it chokes me up.
Yeah.
I am a father. I am a grandfather, and I empathize so much with those parents on the outside screaming at the officers, why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you going in there? And then to see the video of the officer standing around in the hallway. Now, I hate to second guess any officer involved in a shooting. Having the experience myself, I hate to second guess. It's really easy to Monday morning quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked and I watched them and I thought, where are my leaders in this group? Where are my warriors in this group? Children are dying. And I understand in that situation, a lot of those officers are going to be damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Absolutely.
Basically on the facts that they had, Brent, they had a barricaded gunman. So seems to be the training is if he's barricaded, you call in the negotiators, you stand by, you hold for the negotiators. The problem I had with that is that children had already died. And if you can hear gunfire, at one point they did hear gunfire. And so what they did is they moved farther down the hallway to remain safe.
Yeah.
And when you hear gunfire, that's go time. You can't wait anymore. Children are dying. Go in there and reduce the number of casualties you're going to have. I had to admit I was disgusted. I don't want to call them cowards, but the on-scene commander, he bears a lot of responsibility for this.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the man in the hallway, not the command post outside, not the chief of police. It's that senior patrolman, it's that sergeant that's in that hallway.
Well, I'm thinking back in quote unquote the day when we were both on SWAT together. There was always the order of battle and what we were, the rules of engagement, what we were supposed to do and not do. But there was always the idea that the guy standing there in the hallway knows what's going on more so than a guy that's in the rear with the gear. And if you have to take individual action, you got to take that action. And
right.
That goes back to this kind of the whole idea that we're talking about today is basically what I call the death of leadership, of warrior spirit, of independent thought. The whole idea that cops have to make the decisions, life and death, split-second decisions. What we're asking for, or appears to be, in our modern society, especially espoused by progressive politicians and our mass media, they want cops to be counselors and mediators rather than crime fighters. Yes,
I'd have to agree with you. I think not in every situation, and I would almost want to pray that it's not in the majority of the situation. The problem with it's not just locally, I think it's nationwide. We have started listening to a very, very vocal minority of elected officials that just, like I said, believe in unicorns and rainbows. And if we just throw more money into social issues, we can solve crime. The problem is they don't look at the human connection. Humans are naturally greedy. I think not all humans are bad. I think the majority of people are good in this world, but we have to accept the fact that there are very, very bad people in this world who only want to watch the world burn.
Mm-hmm.
And, your thin blue line, your police officers are the protection against those very, very bad people. And they've hamstrung us. Just look at Chicago. Chicago's arrest rates, they're down to 12% of all reported crimes of actually solving them and making them arrest. they've been restricted from vehicle pursuits. Now Chicago's restricted from foot pursuits.
Yeah.
So what do they expect? And now they see crime skyrocketing, and your elected officials are saying, why aren't the police doing their job?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you have the problem is, Lord forbid, if you're that police officer and you actually run and chase a person, that the district attorney is going to come after you and press charges against you.
Exactly.
So why would you want to chase that person? Why would you want to risk the welfare of your family, the well-being of your family, how you make a living? So, society is getting the police department that this very, very vocal minority has pushed for.
Yeah. The socialist utopia that Chicago has become, where the weather report is daily calling for light to moderate small arms fire. And the sad thing is, again, you hamstring the cops. You don't want them to get involved in any kind of use of force. And if they do, you, in some cases, charge them criminally. You ask the question, why would you go out of your way to be aggressive? And yet they still say, well, the crime is going up. The cops aren't doing their job. Really? I mean, you can't have it all here, kids. You may have to shoot a unicorn once in a while.
That is true. Now with Uvalde, you had, 21 people die.
Mm-hmm.
Some head has to roll. And that if those officers had charged in, unfortunately in our society, if those officers had charged in and take out that gunman, and, as soon as they started ramming the door, he started shooting children, the media would be, why didn't they wait for the negotiators?
Yep.
Why didn't they wait for the negotiators? Negotiators could have came and talked him down and saved children. By them forcing the issue, more children were killed. That's what the media would have said. So they were damned if they do, damned if they don't. They were in a no-win situation. But in my true feelings, when they started hearing the gunfire, it was go time. Children were dying. We've got to get in there. We've got to minimize the casualties.
Yep. And that's our standard of training around here, that, if things are active, we go, and we don't wait for the right equipment and the right number of folks and get the command staff set up. I mean, my training standard when I was doing it, and I'm sure to this day, is you go. That's the moment where you have to be a warrior, not a counselor, not a mediator, not a social services worker. You have to strap up, pull your gun, and go. And to even talk that way, you don't hear that kind of talk because it's not politically correct.
No, and in the 90s when we started pushing the warrior ethos, I think that was a good thing. I still believe in it, still subscribe to it. And now it's not good to teach your police officers to be a warrior, according to that, again, that very, very vocal minority of our public. That's where we're doing the disservice to the police officers. No, we need to get that warrior mentality back. That's what keeps cops alive. That's what keeps our good citizens alive. That you have those, George Orwell said it best, people sleep peacefully in their beds at night because of good men and women who stand ready to do violence on their behalf.
Exactly.
And that never truer words have been spoken.
Yep.
But we're uncomfortable with the violence. And the problem is the people that we deal with are still violent. And
that's what has always really amazed me. I've told the story before, I think, that I was, among other things, I was our public information officer. So I would have a lot of folks ride with me that had been cleared and vetted, and they would come out and ride a shift or part of a shift. And uniformly, 100%, when I would go to drop them off at the end of shift, they would look at me and say something to the effect of, I didn't know it was like this. And we're a suburb of a major city. We're no worse or any better than any place else. And their eyes were so opened to realize in our quaint little Norman Rockwell town, there are evil people that the only reason they haven't slit your throat is because they didn't need to at that moment. And that's not an indication of our location or anything like that. It's just in 100 people, there's going to be one that is just flat evil or sociopathic or whatever. And those are the people that law enforcement has to keep at bay. And We've totally, our leadership wants that whole idea to go away. I mean, this idea of sending counselors in place of police officers, that's going to work really good till the first one or two get shot up,
Exactly. Exactly. I don't remember the exact sheriff. There was a sheriff in, I believe in Florida, and one of his deputies was involved in a shooting where he basically did a mag dump into this gentleman. This gentleman had killed someone, including a child or something, and then engaged the police. And the reporter asked him, well, why did he shoot him so many times? And I think the sheriff replied, and the sheriff I looked at as a true leader, said, you can't kill evil enough. And stood by his deputy for
wow.
that, and isn't that the truth? Sometimes you can't kill evil enough. What does it matter if we put one shot in him or dumped an 18-round magazine into him, as long as that man never got back up and hurt another soul again?
Yeah.
That's the kind of leaders we need. We need elected officials who are not afraid of this vocal minority to stand beside their police officers and say, you know what, it's interesting because you have that very vocal minority that'll be out there protesting. And then when you have some conservative counter protest, and if they get into a fight, it's those liberal protesters are screaming for the police. He touched me. I want him arrested.
Yeah.
Now you want us.
Yeah.
When it's your butt on the line.
Yep.
And it's just disheartening.
Yep.
At this point in my career to see where this country has gone.
I've said quite a bit. Where we're at as a country is the tail is wagging the dog. I still believe the silent majority supports law enforcement, understands what we do, and understands that occasionally you're going to have to take care of business. But you've got this vocal minority, and they're co-enablers in the media and progressive politics typically, that they are the loud minority, but that seems to be who's setting the direction of public policy.
I agree 100%. And I never understood, why are the elected officials so afraid of these people? Why don't they just stand up to them and say, no, that's not right. We need to support our police. We want our children safe to walk up and down the street and play in their own front yards. We don't want drugs in our parks.
Yeah.
No, these people are not sick. They are criminals. That is against the law. They are breaking the law. Therefore, they are criminals. That's a problem. No one's responsible for their own actions. They're just sick. No, they're breaking into your house and stealing. They're not sick. They're a criminal.
Yeah. And even if they are sick, when they move into criminal activity, we need to deal with them as criminals.
Exactly. You got to take the punishment.
Yep.
So are we trying to make cops cowards? No. You and I have worked with, hundreds of cops over our years. Very few of them. Yeah, there's one or two I'd say, yeah, I don't want to go to war with this man.
Yes,
but,
and their reputation precedes them.
Yeah, the majority, are going to have your back. They're going to follow you right through the door. And, there are those few that they're going to hit that door first.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want to try to step in front of you and go through that door. So I don't think cops are cowards. I think we're hamstrung. I don't think you become a police officer unless you have that warrior blood deep in you. I don't think you would take that first step to become a police officer unless you didn't hear that call. I think the problem is that we've taken that warrior and we've taken his shield away and we've dulled his sword. He's still there. He's just waiting for you to give him his shield back and let him sharpen that blade. And trust me, he will go out there and he will serve the community just fine. It's those that are above them that have to push that warrior ethos to give that shield back, to sharpen that blade back. I don't think it's the failure of the police. It's the failure of those above us.
Wow. That's great stuff. And I just figured out what bit of audio we're going to use for the teaser here, because that was so well put. And I will remember that and steal it whenever I can. So thank you very much.
Please plagiarize away.
Hey, I'm a journalist. Okay. Well, let's delve into this leadership thing a little bit more because, okay, I get a liberal politician. Part of their playbook is pandering to vocal groups that, want this or want that. That's how they operate. How did it get to law enforcement that individual leaders, even street level leaders, have been dissuaded from doing what they know is the right thing to do to doing the safe thing? And for anybody that's ever been in military or law enforcement or public safety in general, sometimes the right thing and the safe thing line up, but a lot of times they don't, which is why we need people that have courage to be involved in those kind of occupations.
When I started up the leadership chain on the department, as I started making rank, a lot of times I would get the phone call if I was not on the scene, and what do you want me to do at this situation? And I'd always try to remember, this is the time to foster leadership. I would say, I don't know. I'm not there.
Yeah.
You are. You see the facts. Make a decision now. Make a decision now. If you make the right decision, great. If you make the wrong decision, we'll discuss it later. We'll try to fix it, and we'll never let that mistake happen again. But I'm not going to fault you because I truly believe, I don't know if it was Patton that said, a good plan enacted now is better than a great plan enacted later.
Exactly.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yep.
Go with what the information you have and make the decision. I think the U.S. military is very successful at pushing that leadership and that decision-making onto the junior officers, into the senior NCOs, and even down to the corporal level. That's where you see the Russian military failing now because they're so top-heavy in their decision-making.
Yeah, I was going to bring that example up, that you take out the general or the colonel and everybody's running around like an anthill that you've kicked over. Yeah,
and in the United States, what's the corporal at the scene? What has he seen? What does he think? Then let's go with what he decides.
Exactly.
And that's what I've always tried to push when I was in leadership positions, to say, make the decision now based on what you have, and we'll discuss it later. I trust you. That was the big thing. And another thing I think on developing leadership that I always did, this is the result I want. I'm not asking the means to get that result. You figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out, Lieutenant, or you figure it out, Sergeant. But this is the result I want. Make it happen. You do it your way, but make it happen. And I think that breeds good leadership. And we've lost that in law enforcement. Your top executives of law enforcement are decided by an elected official. And that elected official is always going to seek someone who's going to do his bidding.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's, and again, I went that route, when I was a top executive in the department. And I think one of the biggest things in leadership you need to do, when I went to choose my second in command, one of the things I did is to find someone who was exactly the opposite of me.
Yeah.
I wanted someone who did not think like me. I purposely sought out someone for that. And because as a leader, I have to have all the information from both sides, from different viewpoints, before I can make a good, rational decision. So I needed someone who could see things differently and think about things differently and approach me with it. And I think that's where our leadership fails. I think that what we need to do is always seek out that person that one's not afraid of us, and two, that thinks differently. And then you can make a dynamic team in leadership. And I think, if I was an elected official and I had to choose a police executive, I would say, this guy always stands up to me. He's absolutely the one I want to lead that department.
That's what I always told the guys working with me, the supervisor underneath me, is if I ask for your opinion, I want it. And then once I make a decision, we're all of the same mind. But until that point, I want to hear what you've got to say. And
exactly,
it worked, because in my case, I was always a street level supervisor, but you get into the middle of some really evolving situations with multiple agencies and just all kinds of stuff going on. And sometimes when you're standing there in the middle of it and everybody's going, what do we do? It's like, oh my God, where do we even start? That's why I told my guys, I said, if I'm missing something, if I'm not thinking of something, or if I'm going down the wrong road, especially, I need you to speak up, because nobody's that smart that you can, do it right 100% of the time, every time. Unfortunately, in our jobs in public safety, you pretty much got to be right all the time. So that's why you need that teamwork approach. But it's interesting. Sometimes folks, fail in that regard.
They do. And referring back to Uvalde, the men in the hallway, it would have been so nice if there had been one warrior in that said, no, we're going. You're failing. We need to go. And look at the other officers that kids are dying. Let's get in there now. And disregarded the orders. Kids are dying. Let's get in there now and save these children. And that's what was needed there. And again, I hate second guessing.
Right.
I hate playing the Monday morning quarterback. But the facts are the facts. That when I can see with my own eyes, the officer standing there while the gunman is in there shooting children, come hell or high water, I'm going through that door. I'm going to bring a stop to this.
I've seen the video personally of one of the officers that used the hand sanitizer while he was standing in the hallway. I don't think he was worried about germs. I think he was totally mentally vapor locked. And that's that's a whole other topic that, obviously that one particular person never thought he was going to be in that kind of situation. I'm sure he had the training, but he had never, lying in bed or taking a shower or driving down the road, thought, I may be the guy standing there while all this is going on. What will I do?
He has adrenaline flowing. He's trying to do something with his hands. Mm-hmm. You're right. He's not worried about germs. I believe if you truly looked at that man and said, go now, go, we're hitting that door, he would have brought that rifle up and charged on in.
Yep. Well, in the time that we have left, I'm going to ask you two questions. And you've kind of sort of answered one, but we're going to distill it down. I'm going to ask you the two questions, which are, you've got a international audience here. We've got a pretty good size audience. What would you tell leadership? And then we're going to close with, and what do you tell officers?
What would I tell leadership? Support your officers. Do not listen to that very vocal minority. The majority of the citizens of the United States stand behind their police officers. They want law and order. Be the leader. Don't be the politician. Be the leader. And sometimes being a leader is making hard decisions. And sometimes it involves sacrifice, even at the times of maybe your own career. But be the leader, save lives.
Exactly. The test that I was taught, and it's pretty famous, but it actually works. Do the right thing for the right reason at the right time, and then you'll sleep just fine at night.
You're right. You know what? If I was in this situation and I ordered those those officers in, one, I'm going in with them. I never did like being in a command post. I'm going in with them, and we're going to do it. In the end, I'll be haunted by what I see, but I'll know I did the right thing.
Exactly. So for the cops out there, we have a considerable number that listen to the podcast. You're in a great position. You've been there, done that. You see what's going on in the country as you step into your retirement for too long. What do you tell them, especially those young officers that are just out there driving around going, what have I got myself into here?
The hell with those, the hell with those people that tell you not to be a warrior. Be a warrior. You know what? I've had bad press. I've done my job. I will continue to do my job. When it calls for me to fight, I'm going to fight. We've always said that saying, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Exactly.
When in doubt, get that gun in your hand. You can take a letter of reprimand for pulling your gun later, or take a suspension. I've been suspended. Not that big of a deal. All right.
You survived.
I like being alive. So when in doubt, get that gun in your hand. Stand ready to defend your life and the lives of others. Be that warrior. Don't let them dull your blade. Exactly.
There is no dishonor or disrespect from being a warrior when it's appropriate.
Exactly.
Tyson, thank you much. I knew it would be a great podcast and pretty inspiring words to our law enforcement officers who, I'm not in the business anymore, but I certainly appreciate what they're doing. And I'm glad they're still out there. So I do sleep well at night. Actually, I sleep terrible at night because of my law enforcement career, but I don't have to worry about people generally doing bad things to me in my sleep. So I appreciate you and all the cops out there. And it's been a great podcast, and I appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. If I have offended anyone in the listening audience, well, tough.
Go pound sand.
I'm not apologizing for anything I believe in. Stand by your guns, stand by what you believe in, and the heck with anyone. If they don't like listening to it, by any means, don't listen to me the next time.
Yeah.
I won't be offended.
This is not a safe space, and will never be a safe space. So, well, Tyson, thank you very much. Be careful out there. And now that you're spirochete free, we'll get together one of these days.
Thank you, Brett.
I hope my discussion with Tyson Warmoth opens a few eyes and makes us all realize that while everyone wants kind, polite, and courteous law enforcement officers, the focus can't be at the expense of making them hesitant in the face of danger and evil. And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to the Guns Magazine podcast. Guns Magazine was first on the newsstand, and today we're bringing you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got questions or comments about the show, please email me. That's editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast directory, YouTube, and of course you can always listen at gunsmagazine.com. And while you're online, please don't forget to check out our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at americanhandgunner.com, americancop.com, and our numerous special editions available for sale on our websites. Most of all, while you're online, I would really appreciate it if you'd share a favorite episode or some kind words on your own social media. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.